Greetings. This is Atma Bodha, and the topic of today's podcast is no self versus limitless self. And this is an important topic because there are many traditions and respected traditions that really advocate for this concept of no self. But in actual fact, enlightenment is about limitless self. And I can say that because speaking to you right now, I am in an uninterruptible state of samadhi. And that may be a controversial statement to make. But right now, my present consciousness, the consciousness I have 24/7, every second of every day, is one of extreme bliss, ecstasy, and love, and single-minded concentration. And what I feel right now is not no self. What I feel is limitless self, unstoppable self, having a power well up within that feels ultimate. And that is what enlightenment is about. Enlightenment is not about no self. Yes, there could be these baby steps. People talk about stream entry. People talk about emptiness. These are kindergarten steps. Beyond emptiness, beyond this concept of stream entry, you arrive at a place of extreme intensity, extreme fullness, extreme unconditional love, and bliss that encompasses your entire being. You realize then that your presence on this earth is not empty. It is not purposeless. It is not empty of self, but it is full of your authenticity. It's full of your purity. Yes, I can throw around words like superior, but enlightenment is not about being superior. It's about experiencing what is superior. It's about being deep within you, about feeling unconditional love, pure unconditional love, pure agape love. This is the love that Christ spoke about in the Bible. Also in the Bible, there's quotes about you must be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. Does this mean to say that children are enlightened? No, children are not enlightened. However, they have characteristics of enlightenment that adults have forgotten. There's a purity to young children. There's an innocence. There's an uncorrupted nature. And enlightenment is about returning to that source, to that uncorrupted nature. And you do that through single-minded purpose, through resoluteness. And that's how you can arrive to a place of limitless mind instead of a place of no mind. You arrive at a place of limitless self instead of a place of no self. The absolute is the ultimate identity. And it is not some tyrannical, judgmental overlord that demands to grind you into dust, that demands for you to be insignificant and to live an ordinary life. Some people, they talk about enlightenment as an ordinary experience. Well, let me tell you, friends, enlightenment is not an ordinary experience. And if these statements fly in the face of any spiritual or religious tradition out there, so be it. These words can be divisive. I can appreciate that. But sometimes in order to get to the heart of the matter, division is necessary. It's separating the wheat from the chaff. It's removing that shell to that core, that nut within. And that's the purpose of this channel. It's not about this BS that these so-called poser teachers are out there propagating. And there's a lot of it. And I'm not going to talk about or point fingers about which teacher is good, which teacher is bad. It's obvious. You can tell. You can look into their eyes. Do you see a fire within them? Or do they look dead inside? Enlightenment is wonderful. It's amazing. It's when you feel like you are finally who you are. It's not about no self. It's about being your authentic self, the purest core of you possible. If you are an onion, arriving at enlightenment, and this is an old analogy, is like peeling the layers of that onion. And when there are no more layers to peel, then you have arrived. Now, some people might argue that no self is limitless self. Well, if that's the case, why call it no self at all? I see the concept of no self as being deliberately deceptive and evil. Yes, you are not your ego. You are more than what your ego is. But to simply say, oh, I am not my ego, that's not letting you experience the reality of who you are. Now, some might say, well, it's our tradition that how to experience your authentic self is to first point out what you are not. But no self is a negative affirmation. It's got tinges of pessimism in there. It's a negative outlook on life. And the fact of the matter is no matter how jaded you may be towards the absolute, you may look at this message and what I'm talking about as a single facet of the absolute. And that's perfectly fine. You're entitled to your perspective. But I would also add that the absolute is one. Yes, it is the ultimate diamond. And yes, this diamond can have many facets to it. But in the end, it is one. And if you are to encompass all of the individual facets of that diamond into that supreme, tangible, beautiful whole, and you say, oh, this is the ultimate perspective, then you're not coming from merely a place of being a facet, but you are coming from an absolute perspective. And when you're able to do that, that is when your mind is in samadhi. That is when you are at a place of uninterruptible bliss. Bliss so extreme and so powerful that no outside force has the power or the capability to unsettle you or to interrupt the bliss even for a second. This is the definition of true equanimity of mind. In fact, you cannot have equanimity of mind unless your mind is swimming in this bliss of inspiration. Why is that? Because the mind is always going to try and go after something to make it feel good. That's the nature of the mind. The mind is designed to be attached. And when we are walking this path of spirituality, of enlightenment, with the aim of liberation, and we talk about things like being disattached, to not being attached to the result of your outcome. And this is what Buddhism talks about when they talk about the middle path. And there's some confusion about this too. Some people think that the middle path means that you should not be overly happy or overly sad, period. And this itself is a misunderstanding. What the Buddha meant, and what the Buddha sincerely, this is the truth, what the Buddha sincerely meant is that you shouldn't let any external events make you overly happy or overly sad. The middle way is about your reaction to the external. This is the same truth about Stoicism. So here you go. You've got two magnificent traditions. The tradition of Buddhism, the tradition of Stoicism. Both are based upon the very fundamental that you should not be overly happy or overly sad based upon any external event or situation. Now, where this truth has been twisted in Buddhism by many is the belief that instead of it being about how you react to external events, they twist that and say that, okay, you should not be overly happy, you should not be overly sad, period. This is a corruption of the original teaching. A complete corruption. Enlightenment is about being extremely, extremely happy all the time. Defiantly happy all the time. And more than happiness, this is not just mere happiness. These are levels of extreme, intense bliss and unconditional love, unseen and unrecognizable even in modern times. That's how forgotten these teachings have been. So the Buddha himself was a very dynamic and charismatic figure. He was extremely positive person. Extremely positive. But now, today, the Buddhists of the present think that the Buddha was just some kind of stoic, unemotional, or not overly happy, or not overly sad person. Many of them. Now, there's exceptions, of course. But these are the kind of people that are running monasteries today. These are the kind of people that are the head of traditions. They're standing up confidently proclaiming that they know. They don't know. Because when you arrive at true enlightenment, you are arriving not at no self. You're arriving at limitless self. And that's a huge difference. What's one difference? Well, when you're at limitless self, you feel love in your heart. You can say things like, I love you, and mean it. You feel your mind completely immersed in bliss. You don't identify yourself merely with the body, but you recognize that the body is a vehicle that is a part of you. It is an important tool of expression. And that the mind is not something to get rid of and arrive at no mind. No, the mind is a very useful tool. It's not about saying that there is no mind or there is no self. It's about removing the limitations of your mind, to not identify with a superficial version of yourself, but to go deeper, to have a more deep, full, authentic experience. So that's basically it for this podcast about no self versus limitless self. I'm going to be attempting to do these podcasts more often, and maybe I should also be conscious about not swimming, not twisting my chair. But until next time, just know that you are awesome, friend. You are more than any idea that you have about yourself. And that's where the confusion about no self is. It's like who you are is so amazing that to compare who you are today, your idea of who you are today is so minuscule that maybe it could be considered nothing. But it's not nothing. But your true self is beyond the limitations of the ego. Okay? That's the difference. You want to arrive at a place where you're not confined or constrained by an egoic sense of self. But you want to arrive at a place where your mind is so expanded and so inspired that it becomes immersed in the absolute truth. And when that happens, you are liberated. And you no longer have to even think about a concept of what is ego, what is not ego, because you are living in the moment. You are being authentically who you are. You're free to express yourself. You're liberated. And life becomes a celebration, an endless celebration of joy, where we celebrate love and bliss for everyone. And that is what makes life awesome. And that's what life is. Awesome. Until next time, Atma Bodha signing off. Peace.